10 amazing Irish songs. In this video, we're going to explore the history behind them. There's a selection of modern songs and ancient tunes as well. Some you more than likely know, and some you more than likely don't know. On a quick note, this is a compilation of 10 videos that I've done over the last 6 months or so since beginning this YouTube journey, a series called Story Behind the Song. I've compiled them here so that it's just a little bit more of a somewhat easier viewing experience. Whether you just throw this video on in the background and listen and learn about Irish music, or put it on like a podcast to fall asleep to, whatever suits you. I always read the feedback from you all, and one thing that kind of stood out to me is that people do listen to these videos at night while trying to sleep. I was always told that I've got an awful boring voice. Like Father Stone from Father Ted. But hey, if it gets you to sleep, that's okay with me. On a personal note though, it was very, I wouldn't say fun, more painful experience watching myself 6 months ago. But it is reassuring to see that the quality of the videos is slightly improving bit by bit. But anyway, so, since it's Christmas, and this series does contain a mix of contemporary and older folk songs as well, I had to start with Fairytale of New York, but please go ahead and use the chapters in the timeline below if you want to skip ahead to other parts of the video. I really hope you enjoy. It's the most played Christmas song of the 21st century in the UK, and frequently cited as the best Christmas song of all time in the UK and Ireland. But did you know that this iconic duet almost never got finished? And it took like a troubled 2 years to complete. Let's dive into how this chaotic, beautiful mess of a song became an Irish Christmas classic. The song Fairytale of New York was recorded by the London-based band The Pogues, featuring Kirsty MacColl on vocals. The Pogues were founded by Shane MacGowan, Jem Finer, and Spider Stacey. Known for their unique sound, the band fused punk influences with traditional Irish music, giving rise to the genre of Celtic punk or folk punk. Shane MacGowan, the primary lyricist, drew heavily upon his Irish heritage and the experiences of the Irish diaspora for his songs. The composition and release of Fairytale of New York occurred against the backdrop of the 1980s music scene in Britain. This era was defined by electronic sounds like synth pop, post-punk genres like gothic rock, and highly commercial acts dominating the charts. Simultaneously, new forms of rock emerged, notably the folk punk movement pioneered by the Pogues. For a band renowned for its fusion of punk energy with traditional Irish instruments like the banjo and the whistle, attempting to write a mainstream Christmas hit was highly unusual. Like, just stop to think about it for a minute. You know, fast forward a few years, right? And the dreaded All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. You know, that song made sense, right? It's Mariah Carey. But Jesus, like, right, listen, punk, Irish folk, Shane MacGowan, Christmas. It is a really strange combination, but it turned out to be absolutely amazing. The idea for the song originated either from the band's manager, Frank Murray, who thought that a Christmas song would be interesting, or from a wager made by their producer at the time, Elvis Costello, who bet that the Pogues couldn't write a Christmas hit single. Honestly, I think the Pogues here really showed that when a wager is at stake, you give it your all. But it wasn't exactly that easy for them, right? They didn't just like log into Suno, the AI music platform, and say, write me a hit Christmas song that will shut Elvis Costello up, mix up Irish folk, trad and a bit of punk, and sure feck it, throw in a few slur words for a nice hint of controversy over the next 40 years to make the radio stations hate their email inbox during Christmas. No. They actually had to learn an instrument and actually think about writing the song. The 1980s sure were rough. The collaboration between songwriter Jem Finer and Shane MacGowan gave birth to the song, but its development was notoriously difficult. The genesis of the track was long and complicated, taking nearly 2 years to finalise after beginning in 1985. Finer supplied the initial melody and original concept. The original story was set in County Clare on Ireland's west coast and concerned a sailor in New York looking out over the ocean, reminiscing about home. Finer's wife, Marcia, disliked the seafaring concept and suggested new lyrics revolving around a conversation between a couple at Christmas. Thanks a million, Marcia. You had no idea at the time that you actually just influenced one of the best Christmas songs ever. Finer passed his ideas on to Shane, who contributed a Broadway melody. Shane later wrote new lyrics inspired by the band's first US tour in 1986 and the film Once Upon a Time in America, leading him to create a slow piano-based introduction influenced by Ennio Morricone's score. McGowan named the song after J.P. Dunleavy's 1973 novel, A Fairytale of New York. The first attempt to record the song occurred in January 1986, during sessions with producer Elvis Costello, with Kate O'Riordan singing the female part. Costello suggested that the title be Christmas Eve in the Drunk Tank, which the band rejected. Despite several recording attempts, the group was dissatisfied, feeling the track was just not quite there, and it just lacked a confident performance. The song was shelved, and O'Riordan eventually left the band in October 1986. The breakthrough came in August 1987 while working on the album If I Should Fall From Grace with God, with new producer Steve Lillywhite. Lillywhite took a demo home and suggested to his wife, enter English singer-songwriter Kirsty MacColl. He suggested that she record a guide vocal. MacColl worked meticulously on her part. When Lillywhite played her contribution back to the band, they were immediately impressed and realised she was the ideal voice for the female character. McGowan later acknowledged that MacColl transformed the track, stating that she knew exactly the right measure of viciousness and femininity and romance to put into it. Fellow Pogues member Spider Stacey agreed that MacColl was perfect and could sing anything and improve it 100%. And in fact, this is something that I didn't know. Again, tell me in the comments if I am still living under that mossy rock I was on about. But Kirsty's performance on that tape was so good that McGowan recorded his vocals alongside MacColl's tape. They never actually recorded the duet together in the studio. Fairytale of New York is structured as an Irish folk-style ballad. The song opens with the male narrator, Shane McGowan, sobering up in a New York City drunk tank on Christmas Eve, dreaming of a former lover. The central action is an intense call and response dialogue between the two characters, reflecting on the relationship. The narrative centers on two Irish immigrants whose youthful aspirations in New York have been shattered by drug addiction and alcoholism. The lyrics stand out because they swing wildly between emotions, sad one moment, joyful the next, sometimes sweet and sometimes harsh. The conversation turns quickly into a heated argument, with the woman quickly hurling insults like bum and punk at the man. Shane McGowan defended this harsh language, right? And we all know the language that he's talking about, by explaining that the female character was not supposed to be a nice person, or even a wholesome person at that, but an authentic character who is down on her luck and desperate. The mix of bitterness, nostalgia, and tenderness, instead of typical holiday cheer, is what makes the song so enduring. It is sometimes called an anti-Christmas song, precisely because it captures the dark reality of lost youth and ruined dreams. The story paints a vivid portrait of the underbelly of the Irish immigrant life in New York, focusing on human imperfection and struggling rather than idealized joy. Despite the insults and crushing realities, the argument concludes with an expression of devoted love and persistent hope, as the male character promises his dreams are still built around her. But all in all, we're going to get to the elephant in the room, and that is the controversy around the lyrics. But just before we get into it, I definitely need a coffee for this bit, so I'll just be right back. Hell? I didn't order that. That's nice. So, where were we? Ah yes, the lovely lyrics. Despite its status as a beloved Christmas staple, the Fairytale of New York has been subjected to a long-running debate and controversy, specifically concerning the use of certain derogatory words within the lyrics. The debate over censorship began almost immediately upon release. In 1987, when the song was performed on Top of the Pops, the BBC requested that Kirsty MacColl replace the word arse with the perceived less offensive ass. I don't know if the BBC actually listened to the entire song. Anyway, during a live performance in January 1992 on the same show, MacColl further changed the lyric, singing "You're cheap and you're haggard" instead of the homophobic slur. In 2007, BBC Radio 1 attempted to edit the words to avoid offence, a decision MacColl's mother called too ridiculous and which the Pogues found amusing. Of course they did. However, the BBC swiftly reversed the decision following a public outcry, stating that audiences were smart enough to distinguish between maliciousness and creative freedom. That quote, in my opinion, couldn't have said it any better, to be honest. The controversy resurfaced annually, with BBC Radio 1 announcing in November 2020 that it would play a censored version for its younger audience, while Radio 2 would continue with the uncensored version, and 6 music presenters there as well would choose which version to use. However, as recently as 2022, Radio 2 played a radio edit where one of the words was muted and the homophobic slur was replaced with "You're cheap and you're haggard." Shane MacGowan staunchly defended the original lyrics in 2018. He explained that the language was intentionally used because it fitted with the way that she would speak and with her character. MacGowan emphasised that the female character is not supposed to be a nice person, but rather an authentic character who is down on her luck and desperate, and that not all characters in stories are angels or even decent and respectable. And this is what we were touching on a little bit earlier on as well, right? You have a side of art. Music is art. Okay, it's in the same category. People like to see the lovely, soft, shiny, pretty, happy, lovely, nice side of art, but the negative emotions felt with the raw, real, stressful, harsh side of art can be a bit too much. And now, we've all used those bold words in our lives, right? And we should know when they're used in like art and music, when they're used creatively, and when they're used maliciously. Ultimately, the controversy never diminished the song's massive appeal, and I would argue that it only made it more popular. In fact, the raw, unpolished realism captured by the uncensored, heated argument may have contributed to its legend, and I think it has. And this allowed it to appeal to a generation seeking a holiday song that was more emotionally real than sentimental alternatives. How many of yous have had family disasters around Christmas time? When, for example, a family member just drinks too much and ends up ruining the Christmas dinner in some form or another. Life's not perfect. The song isn't perfect. Hell, All I Want for Christmas Is You is far from perfect. God help us in a few weeks. But at the end of the day, it's still a song. Thought, effort, ups and downs went into making it. It's a real song and I absolutely love it. The success of Fairytale of New York rests on its sophisticated production, where the raw, punk energy of the Pogues is meticulously arranged to fuse Irish folk instrumentation with the structure of a grand pop ballad. The song falls under the genres of Celtic rock and Celtic punk, like we've mentioned before. The arrangement uses various elements to evoke both melancholy and festivity. The finished track incorporated contributions from Siobhan Sheehan on the harp, alongside an addition of French horns and a string section, arranged by Fiacre Trench. This mix, combining traditional Irish sounds like the tin whistle played by Spider Stacy with orchestrated pop elements, gives the song a powerful sense of grandeur. The composition deliberately achieves a cinematic feel, painting a vivid scene in New York. And the music video as well, it does an absolutely amazing job at painting this scene. The music video was directed by Peter Doherty and filmed in a bitterly cold New York in November 1987. Elements in this video, such as the opening shot, featuring MacGowan seemingly playing the piano, though James Fearnley's hands wore MacGowan's rings for this close-up, right? And the scene shot inside a real Lower East Side police station where actor Matt Dillon arrests MacGowan, cemented the feeling of an old, gritty movie set in the city. The Fairytale in New York has achieved extraordinary longevity, becoming a perennial Christmas anthem because of, rather than despite, its gritty realism. The song tells a story that isn't about Santa watching you when you're sleeping, Rudolph being bullied, or a woman asking Santa to hurry down the chimney so she can get a light blue convertible, amongst other things. It tells a story about lost youth and ruined dreams. Jesus, I have an awful lot of those lost youth and ruined dreams as well myself. Being an astronaut would have been a blast, to be honest. For a generation, it became the Christmas song, cherished because it captures the disparity and bickering of the holiday season. And you have to agree, making it feel more emotionally real than traditional sentimental songs. The song has never been the UK Christmas #1. It was blocked by the Pet Shop Boys cover of Always on My Mind in 1987. But it did quickly become a hit in Ireland, spending 5 weeks at #1 on the Irish charts after its release in November 1987. In the UK, it has demonstrated an annual resurgence, reaching the UK top 20 on 20 separate occasions since its original release. Due to digital downloads as well and streaming, the song has re-entered the UK top 75 every December since 2005. It has been certified sextuple platinum in the UK for 3.6 million combined sales as of December 2023. In the UK, it is officially the most played Christmas song of the 21st century and is frequently cited as the best Christmas song of all time. I'd say Mariah Carey is fuming. Maybe she can do a cover. I still wouldn't listen to it. The song holds significant emotional weight for the Irish diaspora, as Shane MacGowan's lyrics often focused on the immigrant experience, painting vivid portraits of the underbelly of Irish immigrant life. Its status as a cultural phenomenon was reinforced following Shane MacGowan's death in November 2023, when the song returned to #1 in the Irish singles chart on the day of his funeral. The Pogues reissued the song as a charity single to benefit the Dublin Simon community, an organisation fighting homelessness that MacGowan supported. The enduring power of the duet is inextricably linked to the authentic performances of its two core artists, Shane MacGowan, Kirsty MacColl, whose later lives reflected the song's themes of dreams, loss, and the enduring nature of love. Shane MacGowan, the primary lyricist, was renowned for his ability to write songs that were perfectly crafted poems, capturing the immigrant experience and facing the challenges of that experience with authenticity and courage. However, he also had a titanic reputation for struggle, battling decades of heavy alcohol and drug abuse, which led to his dismissal from the Pogues in 1991 due to erratic behaviour. Despite his turbulent life, which involved physical trauma and hospitalizations, his artistry won high praise, with figures like Nick Cave calling him the greatest songwriter of his generation. He died from pneumonia in Dublin in November 2023, aged 65. Kirsty MacColl, an acclaimed British singer-songwriter in her own right, provided the viciousness and femininity and romance necessary to bring the female character to life. MacColl was tragically killed at the young age of 41 on the 18th of December 2000. While vacationing in Mexico. She was diving with her sons when a powerboat struck her. She managed to push her 15-year-old son out of the way, sustaining fatal head and chest injuries. Her untimely death led to the Justice for Kirsty campaign. Following her death, MacGowan expressed that while the song used to depress him, he now thought of it as a tribute to Kirsty. Her loss is memorialised in Soho Square in London, with a bench inscribed with lyrics from her song, Soho Square. The song's themes of lost youth, ruined dreams, and hope against the odds resonated deeply with the actual experiences of addiction, struggle, and tragic loss endured by both artists, giving the final expression of love at the end of the argument an extraordinary emotional weight.
Shame left more get a bar, shame or hazer get a mar. Soon gone shamed he wore his fame, oh weak again, more get a mar.
Ghile Mear translated to English as My Gallant Darling, also known as My Spirited Lad, and many other variants. It was composed in the early 1970s by Donal O'Leahan. The story behind the song's creation is an intriguing one, with a pleasant twist, but we'll get to that soon. The song was assembled from a traditional air collected in Cuillea in the Gaeltacht region of County Cork, with lyrics selected from Irish language poems by Sean Clorach MacDonald through the years 1691 to 1754. This method of creating music is common in Irish folk traditions. Many well-known Irish songs today are a blend of old melodies paired with poetry, sometimes ancient, sometimes modern. That's part of what makes folk music what it is. In many cases, the original authorship is unknown, which explains the ongoing debate over who wrote a given song. To understand Ghile Mear, we need to look back to the failed Jacobite Rising of 1745. The song is partly based on the lament Bím Sibún ar Bord Gach Low, My heart is sore with sorrow deep. Irish music and poetry span many categories: rebel songs, drinking songs, laments and more. A lament expresses sorrow, often for loss, past events or social injustice. In Bím Sibún ar Bord Gach Low, Ireland or Éire is personified, grieving the exile of Charles Edward Stuart, also known as the Young Pretender or Bonnie Prince Charlie. The title Ghile Mear is a term applied to the Pretender in numerous Jacobite songs of the period. The Jacobites were supporters of the Stuart dynasty. Many Irish Jacobite songs were reportedly set to the tune The White Cockade, a long-standing 17th century song. The white cockade was originally a ribbon ornament worn by young women, but later reinterpreted to symbolise military allegiance in the Jacobite context. In addition to Bím Sibún ar Bord Gach Low, the lyrics of Ghile Mear also draws from an earlier Jacobite poem by MacDonald, under the title Ar Bhar na Cnoc San Imachén, or Over the Hills and Far Away. Walsh noted that this was said to be MacDonald's first Jacobite poem, written during the 1715 Rising, with the exiled hero in this case being the old Pretender, James Francis Edward Stuart. So how did the song we know today come into being? The modern version is closely linked with renowned composer Sean O'Riordan, who founded an Irish language choir in Cuillea in the 1960s. The melody, an old Irish air as we mentioned, was collected by O'Riordan from a local elder, Donal O'Buchala, and preserved on tape. Following O'Riordan's premature death in 1971, his son Peadar suggested to Donal O'Leahan that he should create a song from this melody. O'Leahan took up the suggestion, and the song was composed around 1972. In the modern lyrics, O'Riordan himself becomes the lamented hero, replacing Bonnie Prince Charlie. Ghile Mear thus bridges centuries of Irish music and poetry, combining traditional airs with Jacobite era poetry and a modern tribute to a cultural icon. Ireland, 1803. A failed uprising. A group of rebels, idealists, fighters, poets, are sentenced to exile in a far-off hell called Van Diemen's Land, modern-day Tasmania. Half a world away, in 1981, another prisoner, locked behind the walls of the Long Kesh in Northern Ireland, picks up a pen. His body is wasting away, but his words carry a revolution. That prisoner was Bobby Sands, and the song was Back Home in Derry. Back Home in Derry is a thread tying 2 centuries of rebellion together. From the blood-soaked streets of Dublin to the prison blocks of Northern Ireland, the lyrics were written by Bobby Sands, a 27-year-old IRA volunteer who was imprisoned in Long Kesh Prison, also known as the Maze, a notorious British prison in County Antrim, just outside Belfast. To really understand the song more, and the weight that it carries, let's first talk a little bit about Bobby Sands. Bobby Sands wrote Back Home in Derry in 1980 while serving a 14-year sentence in Long Kesh Prison for possession of a handgun. It was his second time behind bars. He'd already served 3 years from 1973 to 1976 on a previous firearms charge. Just months after his release, Sands was arrested again following an IRA bombing of a furniture store in Dunmurry. Although he wasn't convicted for the bombing, a revolver found in the house where he was hiding led to his imprisonment. When Sands was first jailed in 1973, IRA prisoners like him had been entitled to special category status, which recognised them as political prisoners, not ordinary criminals. This allowed them to wear their own clothes, avoid prison labour and associate freely. But in 1976, the British government revoked the policy, aiming to criminalise paramilitary activity. The prisoners resisted immediately, refusing uniforms, then escalating to the dirty protest. When those efforts failed, they turned to hunger strikes. Sands began his in March 1981. A month later, while still refusing food, he was elected Member of Parliament for Fermanagh and South Tyrone. A shocking win that brought global attention to the strike. The British government still refused to back down. Sands died on May 5th, 1981, after 66 days without food. A prisoner turned politician whose protest echoed far beyond the prison walls. Now that we understand who Bobby Sands was and the struggle he gave his life to, let's talk about the song a bit more. Back Home in Derry reaches back to 1803, to a failed uprising led by Robert Emmet and the United Irishmen, a revolutionary group fighting to break Ireland free from British rule. Their vision was bold for its time, a secular independent Irish republic with equal rights for all. But the rebellion collapsed, Emmet was executed, and many of his fellow rebels were sentenced to transportation, exiled to Van Diemen's Land, now known as Tasmania. It was one of the harshest penal colonies in the world, a place of forced labour, disease and death. What Bobby Sands does in this song is powerful. He draws a direct line from Robert Emmet and the rebels of 1803 to himself and his fellow hunger strikers. Both were punished for fighting the same fight, just in different centuries, for a free Ireland. But there's more. The melody of Back Home in Derry wasn't written by Bobby Sands. It was borrowed from Gordon Lightfoot's The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, a ballad about a doomed shipwreck on Lake Superior. That tune, dark and relentless, gave Sands' lyrics an eerie rhythm that captured the despair and defiance of exile. It fit perfectly because in both songs, men are swallowed by forces beyond their control. Storms, empires, history itself. Christy took Sands' words with his guitar and his voice, and a truth too big to silence, and he turned it into one of the most popular rebel songs we hear today. Back Home in Derry connects two moments in Irish history, Emmet's failed rebellion and Sands' hunger strike, and shows they're part of the same struggle. One died on the gallows, the other on a prison bed, but both believed that Irish freedom was worth dying for. And that's what makes this song matter. Don't think of it as just about ships or prisons or loss even. Think of it as about endurance, refusing to forget. It's about the cost of resisting empire and the power of memory to keep that resistance alive. You know this song. This ancient tune, more than 4 centuries old, captures the essence of regret and celebration. We're talking about The Wild Rover, a song so popular, like really popular. Its chorus is known across most British, Irish and Irish American cultures, even if people don't know the rest of the verses. Just remember, when you're singing this song, you're supposed to slur your words, because that's usually how it's heard. But forget the pints for a second. This isn't just a simple drinking song. It's an epic tale of a wanderer's return, a lesson in economics, and a cultural phenomenon that's as relevant today as it was in the 1600s. Get ready to learn about the true story behind this folk classic. And trust me, next time you hear those iconic claps, you'll be hearing a lot more than just the melody. This song is ancient. The Wild Rover is an old Irish folk tune that dates back to the neighbourhood of 400 years ago, approximately to the 1600s. It is such a popular and well-travelled folk song that many territories have laid claim to the original version. However, scholarly research points its origin elsewhere. Brian Peters claimed that the song's start was actually a 17th century English broadside written by Thomas Lanfear. From this single broadside, it evolved into several distinct versions found throughout England, Scotland, Ireland and North America, later spreading to Australia. While many people sing it while raising a glass, there is an alternative history suggesting that it was written as a temperance song, meaning a song to discourage drinking. It spread from Scotland to America via the temperance movement and was found in the American Songster, printed in the US in 1845. The sheer variety of its recordings is massive as well. The Rude Folk Song Index lists 200 different versions of the song. The lyrics tell a simple yet potent story, earning the song its categorization as a traditional ballad. The protagonist is a young man who has been away for many's the year, admitting that he has spent all my money on whiskey and beer. Sounds a bit like myself, to be honest with you. The plot hinges on one pivotal moment. The Wild Rover returns to the alehouse he used to frequent. He tells the landlady his money is spent and asks for credit. The landlady promptly answers him, nay, no, telling him she can have such a custom as yours, I can have any day. Meaning, she has no time for broke drunks. Ouch. But the Rover has an ace up his sleeve. He pulls out 10 sovereigns bright, which is gold. Immediately, the landlady's eyes open wide with delight, and her tone shifts instantly. She says he can have the best whiskey and wines, and claims the words she told him earlier were only in jest.
And the words that you told me were only in jest, and it's no...
Having made his point, and perhaps teaching the landlady a lesson, the Rover reaffirms his commitment to reformation. He will go home to his parents, confess what he has done, and ask them to pardon their prodigal son. He vows repeatedly to never play the Wild Rover no more. So who took this 400-year-old tale and made it an international pub staple? While the song circulated for centuries, the Irish folk group The Dubliners played a significant role in popularising it in the modern era, recording their version in 1964. In fact, they even released it as a single.
It's no, nay, and ever. No, nay, never, no more will I play.
But their version is far from the only famous one. The tradition continued through the decades with many other influential groups, including the Clancy Brothers with Tommy Makem in 1965, the Pogues in 1984, and the American Celtic punk band the Dropkick Murphys in 2001. Today, the Wild Rover is still celebrated as a folk song that is as relevant today as it was 400 years ago. It remains a particular favourite, played frequently at Irish bars, because it demands audience participation. The key participatory moment occurs during the refrain, after the line, and it's no, nay, never. Audience participation? What other famous song got popular because of its amazing audience participation? The song's infectious energy and well-known chorus have carried it far beyond the pub. In sports, football fans sing the chorus at matches, often adapting the words to suit their team. This is notably done by supporters of Celtic Football Club in Scotland, as well as fans of Blackburn and Burnley football clubs in England. In advertising, the tune's familiarity means companies exploit its popularity. Derry Crest, for instance, adapted the tune to advertise their Clover margarine in the UK.
Oh, we all love Clover, all over this land. Oh, we all love Clover, all over this land.
What makes this song endure through centuries, through folk revivals, through punk bands, and even into margarine commercials? The story of the Wild Rover isn't really about drinking. It's about redemption and the ruthless nature of commerce. The landlady refused him credit when he was poor, but her delight upon seeing the 10 sovereigns bright instantly changed her mind. It's a centuries-old commentary on how quickly society changes its tune when money is flashed. For 400 years, the Wild Rover has been promising to turn his life around. But we have to wonder, when he's singing about returning home, is he truly repenting of his ways, or is he simply enjoying the tastes of the wines of the best, bought with his newfound gold? The Wild Rover is the ultimate folk mirror. It reflects our desire to forgive, our attraction to money, and that universal human promise to definitely be better tomorrow.
One last time and it's no, nay, and ever. No, nay, never, no more will I play the Wild Rover. No, never, no more.
It's Easter. 1916. Dublin is on fire. Gunshots echo through the streets. And somewhere in the fog, a melody begins to form. A song that'll haunt empires and stir a nation. Alright, so the Foggy Dew isn't just some old Irish folk tune you hear in the background of a moody movie scene or something like that. It's actually one of the most powerful political ballads to come out of Ireland's fight for independence.
As down the glen one Easter morn to a city fair rode I.
But to really understand why, you gotta go back to one of the most dramatic turning points in Irish history, the 1916 Easter Rising. On Easter Monday, April 24th, 1916, a group of Irish Republicans launched an armed rebellion against British rule. Their goal? To establish an independent Irish Republic. It was bold and it was doomed. The British Army crushed the rebellion within a week. Over 400 people were killed and most of the rebel leaders were executed. But here's the twist. Those executions shocked Irish public. Sympathy for the rebels grew. The Rising was once seen as a failure, lit the spark that led to Ireland's eventual independence. A few years later, in the aftermath of all of this, a Catholic priest named Canon Charles O'Neill wrote a poem. He wasn't a soldier or a politician. He was a man with a pen and a cause. And that poem would become the Foggy Dew. He set the lyrics to a traditional Irish melody, possibly the Muirloch Shore, with the help of arranger Carl Hardebeck. The result was a song soaked in sorrow, pride and defiance. Now here's where it gets intense. The song makes one very bold claim. It's better to die fighting for Ireland at home than to die in a foreign war for the British Empire. Those lines refer to the Gallipoli campaign during World War I, where thousands of Irishmen, yes, Irishmen, died as part of the British Army. Over 200,000 Irish soldiers served in World War I. The song questions that sacrifice. Was it right to die in Turkey under a Union Jack, while Ireland was still under British control? That's the tension at the heart of the song. O'Neill doesn't just mourn the rebels who died in 1916, he elevates them. They're martyrs, heroes. Their deaths have meaning, unlike the anonymous slaughter on distant battlefields. The words Foggy Dew in the title, it's not just poetic in itself, it's symbolic as well. It represents mourning, mystery, and the memory of all those fallen. The fog becomes a shroud for the dead and a veil over history itself. So let's be real. This song isn't neutral. It's not a folk song alone. It's political poetry. It draws a line in the sand between fighting for Ireland and dying for the Empire. It also criticises Britain directly. The lyric, Perfidious Albion, is old school Irish shade for England, basically calling the Empire two-faced and treacherous. And this wasn't just O'Neill's opinion. It tapped into something thousands of Irish people were feeling after the Rising and World War I. Anger, grief, and the belief that the fight for freedom was just. Over the decades, the Foggy Dew became a rallying cry. It's been covered by the Dubliners, Wolf Tones, Sinead O'Connor, and even mixed with pipes and drums for UFC fighter Conor McGregor's walkout music. Yeah, it's gone from rebel ballad to stadium anthem. And that's the thing about music like this. It doesn't just tell a story, it becomes the story. For some, it's a tribute. For others, it's a challenge. Like, what are we willing to fight for? Canon O'Neill wrote The Foggy Dew as a kind of response, maybe even a correction to how Irish sacrifice was being remembered. It's mournful as well as angry, and it's also very unforgettable. It reminds us that poetry isn't always soft. Sometimes it hits like a bullet.
I heard a young girl calling.
It's a song known by many. You more than likely know the tune, and you definitely know the melody. If you've been to or watched an Irish rugby or football match, or a Celtic match even, you've definitely heard of this song. The Fields of Athenry. For me, I first became aware of this song when I was like one of many bored kids on a bus going on a school tour. I knew the melody, but I didn't know the words. So I was literally just singing gibberish that closely matched what others were singing. I know I wasn't the only one, and I know you all do it too to some extent. Back then, we didn't know why the song was written, what it was about. We only cared about getting on our school tour and enjoying having no homework for the day. But as I got older and more into Irish music, especially the history of the songs, this song really stands out to me as one of the most important songs for Ireland. The story is simple, but it resonates with so many people. In short, the song is about the famine, loss and survival. Back then, during the famine, or the Great Hunger if you'd prefer, people had nothing to eat. There wasn't much money either, and people were forced into poverty due to many factors. Try and imagine it. Your house, your food, your starving kids not fully understanding what's going on. You want to do the best that you can for your family, although you can't. No matter what, you can't do anything. The only way you can get food to feed your family without having money is to beg, borrow, scavenge or steal. For those who were caught stealing, they were locked up and, in many cases, deported. Are you still imagining what it would be like to be in such a position? Now, I want you to add on to that stress being separated from your family, and either you or your kids being deported to Australia. It's not very fun, is it? This was the life millions of Irish were forced into back then. This is why the population was cut in half over the years of the Great Hunger. If you're watching this video and you have an ounce of Irish ancestry in you, you are essentially a survivor of this time. Your great-great-grandparents were sent away or left Ireland to build a better life. To put this into perspective, let's take the United States for example. Ireland's population before the Great Hunger was about 8.2 million. 2 million people emigrated mostly to the US in the first few years. Now, let's fast forward to today. According to a 2020 census, nearly 10% of Americans claim Irish roots. That's 32 million people. That's considerably more than the population of Ireland today, which still hasn't recovered to pre-famine times. Fields of Athenry was written in 1979 by Pete St. John. He was born in Inchicore, Dublin in 1932. He was trained as an electrician and had emigrated to Canada before returning to Ireland in the 1970s. When he returned home, he was struck by how much the country had changed and how much had been forgotten. From here, he began writing songs that connected to Ireland's past, though out of all of his songs, none would resonate more deeply than The Fields of Athenry. The song is set during the Great Famine of the 1840s. The Fields of Athenry tells the story of a man named Michael, who lives near the small town of Athenry in County Galway. His wife Mary and their baby are starving. With no other options, Michael steals corn to try to save them. He's caught, and for that he's sentenced to transportation to Botany Bay, a penal colony in Australia over 10,000 miles away. That means he won't be jailed in Ireland. He'll be put in a ship with other convicts, sent across the world, and likely never seen again, and he'll likely never see his family again. Michael is a fictional character, but stories like this actually happened many times. We don't immediately connect with this fact, as it's unimaginable in today's age that such a serious punishment be given to someone stealing food to feed their family, which, if you think about it, isn't exactly their fault. They're starving in the first place. At the beginning of the video, I was asking you to empathize with the people who lived through the famine back then. I want you to think about that again. Imagine being sent away from your starving family after trying to help them, never to be seen again. During the famine years, millions of Irish people faced hunger and desperation. When the potato crop failed, it wiped out the staple food that most of the poor relied on. But other crops like oats, wheat and barley were still being harvested in Ireland and exported. They were grown on land owned by landlords and guarded by British policy. So while the countryside starved, ships full of food left Irish ports every day. People like Michael broke into storehouses or raided shipments out of sheer desperation. Some stole food from landlords. Others took part in protests or riots. Many were arrested and thousands were sentenced to transportation, labelled criminals for acts of desperation. Many were punished under laws that left little room for the realities of the famine. Transportation wasn't just punishment. It was permanent separation. Families were torn apart. Convict ships took men and sometimes women to Australia, where they were forced to work under brutal conditions. Those left behind, like Mary in the song, were often destitute and alone. Sometimes the only contact came from letters sent years later, if at all. At the time, sentences like this were common. Britain used transportation as a way to deal with overcrowded prisons and to populate its colonies. Between 1791 and 1853, over 30,000 Irish people were sent to Australia this way, many for petty crimes or acts of survival. And it wasn't just the physical punishment. There was deep shame and stigma attached. Families of convicts were often shunned. Communities saw them as tainted, even when everyone knew the crime was survival. This is the world the Fields of Athenry is set in. A world where a man could be exiled for trying to feed his child, where empty fields sat alongside loaded ships, where the Crown's law saw mercy as weakness. So when the song says Michael stole Trevelyan's corn, try not to think of it as a line about theft. It's more about the injustice. Trevelyan was the British official in charge of famine relief, and in Irish memory he's seen as the face of cold, bureaucratic cruelty. He delayed aid, blamed the Irish for their suffering, and said the famine was God's judgment, and to quote, "the judgment of God sent to teach the Irish a lesson." Michael then becomes a stand-in, not just for one man, but for thousands. He represents the husbands, sons and fathers who were sent away, and the women and children who stayed behind watching ships sail out of view, wondering if they'd ever see their loved ones again. The song takes a national tragedy and tells it through one family. That's what gives it power. It's not a list of historical facts. It's the emotional truth of what happened to the Irish people during the famine, boiled down to a single heartbreaking goodbye. Pete St. John later explained that he invented the characters of Michael, his wife Mary, and their child to represent the ordinary families caught in the devastation of the famine. He wasn't telling the story of a specific man, but rather capturing what happened to many. These were people pushed into impossible choices, choosing between obeying the law and trying to keep their families alive. Some took food from stores, fields or shipments. Some joined protests or walked for miles hoping to receive aid. For those caught, the consequences could be severe. Arrests were common and many were sentenced to long prison terms or deportation. Families were separated. Some never reunited. Children were often left behind with extended family or neighbours, or placed in overcrowded workhouses. St. John chose to set the story in Athenry, a quiet town in East Galway, not far from the coast. It's surrounded by farmland, and in normal times, those fields would have produced more than enough food. But during the famine, the landscape became symbolic. Green fields that couldn't feed the people who lived beside them. That contrast left a lasting impression, and the name Athenry became the emotional heart of the song. The Fields of Athenry was first recorded in 1979 by Irish folk singer Danny Doyle. His version resonated with audiences almost immediately, and it reached the top 10 in the Irish charts. It was a powerful, stripped-back performance that introduced the song to a new generation of listeners. Not long after, other artists began to take it on. In 1982, folk group Barleycorn released their version, which also charted well, but it was Paddy Riley's rendition, released the same year, that truly took the song to another level. Riley's version peaked at number 4, but more significantly, it stayed in the Irish charts for an extraordinary 72 weeks. That kind of longevity is rare for any song, and it helped solidify the Fields of Athenry as more than just a folk ballad. It became part of the national soundtrack of Ireland. Moving on from that, the song didn't stay confined to records or radio. It began to take on a second life, not in concert halls or pubs, but in stadiums. In the late 1980s, fans of the Galway hurling team were among the first to start singing the Fields of Athenry from the stands. Its slow, powerful melody and emotional lyrics made it perfect for large crowds. It wasn't a chant, it was a song that carried weight, and it spread very quickly. By the time the Republic of Ireland soccer team were qualified for the 1990 World Cup, the song was already being sung by fans in green jerseys across the country. It became a kind of unofficial anthem, a way for supporters to connect not just with the team, but with a deeper sense of shared history. Then came Celtic Football Club in Glasgow. Founded in the 1880s to support Irish immigrants in Scotland, Celtic had always had strong links to the Irish community. By the early 1990s, the Fields of Athenry had been adopted by their fans too. It became a fixture at Celtic Park, sung before games, after goals, and even during long pauses in play. It wasn't about rivalry or results, it was about identity. One of the most moving moments in the song's history came in 1991, during a testimonial match for long-serving Celtic goalkeeper Packy Bonner. Pete St. John was invited to attend the match and speak to the crowd. He used the moment to thank the people of Glasgow for welcoming Irish famine emigrants generations before. Then, standing before a crowd of 60,000, he began to sing the Fields of Athenry. As he sang, the entire stadium joined in. The sound of tens of thousands of voices echoing the chorus overwhelmed St. John. He would later describe it as one of the most unforgettable and humbling moments of his life. That performance wasn't just emotional, it was a turning point for the song. From then on, the song wasn't just something people would listen to, it became something that people would participate in. It had moved from radio hit to cultural anthem, something that belonged to the people. For me, I follow the rugby a good bit, and it always gives me pins and needles whenever the crowd sings the Fields of Athenry. Maybe we're in a tough spot, maybe we need some support, or we're miles ahead and the crowd is just having the crack. Either way, it always spurs the team on. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to hear that as one of the rugby lads playing on the field, either for or against Ireland. Supportive, intimidating, or both. You'll hear the Fields of Athenry in places far from Galway as well. It's sung by fans of Munster Rugby, London Irish, and the Irish national rugby team. It echoes in stadiums and arenas, before kick-offs, after final whistles in the moment of triumph, and in moments of defeat. The melody has crossed borders even, and been reimagined in countless forms. Liverpool fans turned it into the Fields of Anfield Road, swapping famine for football, but keeping the emotional core. Cork City supporters even created the Fields of Bishopstown, adding their own local flavour. Even in Indonesia, fans have adapted the tune into their chants, Fields of GBK, proof of how far one song can travel and how deeply it can connect. But no performance is quite remembered like what happened in 2012. If you're a football fan, you'll definitely remember this. When Ireland was playing Spain at the UEFA European Championship, the score was an abysmal 4-0. Ireland's elimination was certain, but instead of heading for the exits, Irish fans began to sing. Tens of thousands joined in. The commentators fell silent. Broadcasters across Europe let the sound take over. Spain's manager called it the most powerful moment of the tournament. Others called it a lesson in what sport and community are really about. There are some football matches where the opposing teams will kick the bejesus out of each other after the match. That's not what sport's about. The Irish fans on that day showed the world what good sportsmanship is about. Pete St. John passed away in 2022 at the age of 90. He once described the Fields of Athenry in simple terms, a ballad about famine. He had written such a simple song in response to feeling that Ireland had forgotten who they were and where they came from. A simple song with a catchy melody, an amazing chorus, and a vivid story. But I personally think he knew, better than anyone else, that it had become something so much more. A story about a man with a small family in a quiet town. But in doing so, he gave voice to millions of people. The song indeed started out as capturing a historical moment and the emotional legacy left by it. Grief, endurance, love and loss, all within this simple song. It became a way to remember, to grieve, to feel connected to the past and to each other, no matter the setting. A song that speaks equally to those who know every detail of Irish history and to those who simply recognise the ache in its chorus. Imagine sitting beside someone at a football match. You have no idea who that person is or where they came from. But then the crowd starts singing this song, and the person beside you does as well. Suddenly you realise that they have the same history and they have the same love for their country and the same respect for all those around. Suddenly that stranger becomes more familiar to you. That's all thanks to this song and Pete St. John. The Fields of Athenry is a memory shared and sung by millions, and it will continue to be sung for generations to come. So that's it for the video. You know what I learned from this is that for my whole life I've known this song. I've heard this song so many times, but I never actually really knew the story behind it. I never really opened my mind a little bit more just to understand what the story was and really empathise, not with Michael and his family, sure, they were fictional, but to the unknown people who suffered a similar situation many years ago. I personally couldn't imagine being away from my family more than a few weeks, never mind being completely separated from them for such a petty crime of stealing food. It really made me aware of how lucky we have it today. Though our struggles and stress are in different forms, The emotions and feelings we have today are no different than the people of hundreds of years ago, but it really takes a bit of effort to put yourself in the shoes of those people. I'd love to know your take on this. Has this video given you a different outlook on the song? What did you take away from the video? Please let me know in the comments. Few songs capture the heart like Danny Boy. A melody full of longing, a story full of loss, and yet no one is entirely sure where it came from. In this video, we're going to dive into the mysterious origins of Ireland's most beloved song. Danny Boy stands out as one of the most beloved and recognisable ballads in the English language, a song so deeply intertwined with Irish culture that it is often considered an unofficial anthem for Irish Americans and Irish Canadians. Its melancholic melody and poignant lyrics evoke a powerful sense of longing, departure, and a hopeful reunion, making it a perennial favourite for moments of deep emotion, particularly at funerals and memorial services. However, the history of Danny Boy is far more complex and surprising than its popular association might suggest, marked by mysteries surrounding its ancient tune and the unexpected origins of its famed lyrics. This video will serve as a comprehensive deep dive into the song Danny Boy, tracing its origins from its enigmatic melody to its modern perception, exploring its meaning, widespread usage, and enduring cultural impact. The story of how this tune came to be widely known begins in 1851 in Limavady, County Derry, Northern Ireland. A woman named Jane Ross is credited with first collecting the melody. She reportedly heard an unnamed travelling fiddler playing the unique tune on a street in Limavady on a market day. Recognising its beauty, Ross asked if she could notate the music for a friend in Dublin called George Petrie, who was dedicated to preserving the ancient music of Ireland. Petrie, who was well known for Irish musical preservation, then published Ross's transcription in his 1855 book, The Ancient Music of Ireland. In his publication, Petrie noted that the tune was an anonymous air and gratefully acknowledged Ross for placing her large collection of popular unpublished melodies at his disposal. He specifically described it as an air from the county of Londonderry, which eventually led to its widely accepted title, the Londonderry Air. Regrettably, the name of the fiddler who played the tune for Jane Ross was never recorded, and he may forever remain anonymous. The origin of the Londonderry Air itself, however, has long been shrouded in mystery, as it seemed to appear out of nowhere in Petrie's collection. With no other collectors encountering it, various theories and discoveries have since emerged, attempting to trace its earlier provenance. The first one, The Young Man's Dream. The melody we now associate with Danny Boy may have begun life as an Irish traditional air called The Young Man's Dream. This tune was documented in 1792 by Edward Bunting, a music collector and organist from Armagh. Bunting heard it performed by the celebrated harper Dennis Hempson of McIlhatton, just a short distance from Jane Ross's later home in Limavady, where she would famously transcribe the Londonderry air. Bunting published this version in 1796, a general collection of the ancient Irish music. Some music historians believe Jane Ross may have recorded the tune incorrectly, as the rhythm she used, in 4/4 time, differs from other airs Hempson was known for playing, which often used the 3/4 time. Separate from The Young Man's Dream itself, the first known lyrics to be paired with the melody were for a song called The Confession of Deborah, also known as O Shrive Me Father. Written by Edward Fitzsimmons and published in 1814, this version predates Danny Boy by nearly a century and shows how the tune was already evolving in the public sphere. Another theory credits the melody to Rory Dul O'Cahan, a 17th century Irish harpist who spent much of his life in Scotland. According to legend, the tune came to him in a dream. And also, some suggest the melody originated in the Scottish Highlands. They pointed to the opening imagery of Danny Boy, from glen to glen and down the mountainside, noting that glens and mountainous landscapes are more characteristic of Scotland than most of Ireland, further muddying the tune's birthplace. Despite these debates about its precise birthplace, The tune stuck, becoming a melody for numerous songs throughout the late 19th century. The way Irish folk music blends and borrows from different traditions helps explain how a song with such uncertain origins could still become such an important part of Irish identity, as demonstrated by songs like Dirty Old Town, which was written by an Englishman about an English town but considered Irish because of its performers, and Leaving Liverpool as well. This is about a journey from England to California but sung by Irish audiences. The metric of an Irish folk song often has less to do with its origin and more to do with its listener and its absorption into the popular canon. Music has flowed freely between Ireland, Scotland and the rest of the UK for centuries, sharing enough qualities to make attempts at separation difficult and useless to try to separate. This inherent openness of Irish music allowed the Londonderry air to be embraced fully, regardless of its original provenance. The lyrics of Danny Boy were penned by an English lawyer and prolific lyricist, Frederick Edward Weatherly, 1848 to 1929. Weatherly, who was born and raised in Portishead, Somerset, England, was an exceptionally productive writer, estimated to have written the lyrics to at least 3,000 popular songs. Beyond Danny Boy, his other well-known works include the sentimental ballad The Holy City and the World War I song Roses of Picardy. Weatherly was a barrister by profession, practicing first in London and then in the west of England, and remained active as both an author and a lawyer until his death. Ironically, for a lyricist whose most famous work became so synonymous with Ireland, it is alleged that Weatherly himself had never actually visited Ireland. Weatherly initially wrote the words of Danny Boy in 1910, while living in Bath in Somerset. However, these original lyrics were set to a different tune and did not achieve much success. The pivotal moment for the song came in 1913, though some accounts suggest 1912, when Weatherly's Irish-born sister-in-law, Margaret Enright Weatherly, also known as Jess, sent him a copy of the Londonderry air. Margaret, who was living in America, in Colorado, had heard the tune played by Irish railway workers or immigrants. A different story suggests Margaret actually sang the tune to him in person in 1912 with different lyrics. Regardless of the exact scenario, Margaret is widely credited with the crucial act of fusing together what would become one of history's most popular songs. Upon receiving the melody, Weatherly immediately recognised that his existing Danny Boy lyrics perfectly fit the rhyme and metre of the Londonderry air. He modified his lyrics to align with the tune, and the newly paired words and melody, published in 1913, achieved an instant success and became a worldwide hit. After the successful pairing of his lyrics with the Londonderry air, Frederick Weatherly entrusted the song to the English opera singer Elsie Griffin. Griffin, who lived from 1895 to 1989, known for her soprano roles in Savoy operas, played a crucial role in popularising Danny Boy. She began her career by entertaining British troops in France during World War I. Her stunning voice, coupled with the emotional lyrics, really hit these young homesick lads hard, making Danny Boy an instant smash and ensuring that everyone wanted to perform Danny Boy. John Arlott noted that her voice is preserved in the mind's ear of surviving 1914 to 1918 trench fodder as the voice for Danny Boy. The first recording of Danny Boy was made in 1915 by the Austrian-born opera singer Ernestine Schumann-Heink. Following this, the song's popularity soared. By 1940, Glenn Miller and his orchestra released a single that climbed to number 17 in Pop Memories 1890 to 1954. The song was clearly on its way to becoming a global phenomenon. Perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding Danny Boy is its precise meaning, as Weatherly never explicitly indicated his intent, leaving its interpretation open to decades of conjecture and debate. This very ambiguity, however, is a key to its universal appeal, allowing it to resonate deeply with people of many nationalities and faith, conveying a universal lament about separation and the finality of death, alongside the enduring power of love. Several popular interpretations of the song's meaning have emerged. One of the most common interpretations, the line the pipes are calling, evokes the image of war pipes rousing locals to action. Though this imagery is more traditionally Scottish than Irish, this reading suggests a parent bidding farewell to a son embarking on military service, expressing love and longing for his return. For many, especially within the Irish diaspora, the song resonates as a poignant cry for home and a loved one departing, symbolising displacement from one's country. The history of the diaspora is marked by ancestors driven out by force and famine, generational poverty, forced labour, religious discrimination, and the systematic loss of Irish language, religion, customs, law, dress, government and land. In this light, Danny Boy speaks to a collective cultural grief and longing for a lost homeland. Regardless of who Danny is or why they're leaving, the song conveys powerful feelings of loss, departure and even death, yet it is also uplifting. The soaring highest note on the words "Come ye back" offers a sense of hope for reunion. This mixture of sorrow and hope, especially the hope for life after death, has made the song resonate deeply, particularly within the Irish diaspora. Its emotional flexibility allows it to speak to anyone experiencing the pain of separation or loss, making it a universal lament. This profound emotional depth aligns with the broader characterization of Irish folk music, which is often described as the most human, most varied, most poetical and most imaginative in the world, and particularly rich in tunes which imply considerable sympathetic sensitiveness. While Irish music certainly celebrates joy and humour, a high volume of popular Irish songs, especially those embraced by the American Irish diaspora, are deeply mournful, sad and nostalgic, often focusing on themes of death, famine, civil war and unrequited love, such as Molly Malone, The Fields of Athenry and The Parting Glass. Danny Boy fits perfectly into this tradition, embodying Irish love, beauty and grief, and its proliferation at funerals speaks deeply to the role of Irish music in mourning. It meets the expectation that Irish music be mournful, connects with cultural nostalgia, and expresses a niche blend of sorrow, nostalgia and hope. Despite its complex and undeniably English lyrical origin, Danny Boy has been so thoroughly embraced by Irish culture that it is widely perceived as an integral and authentic part of the Irish musical canon. Its association with the Londonderry air, believed to be ancient and collected for the preservation of Irish music, gave it cultural legitimacy that resonated with movements to revive ancient Irish culture, particularly during the early 20th century leading up to the 1916 Easter Rising. It became a conspicuous element of the canon of Irish songs in popular imagination. The song's usage is perhaps most notable at funerals and memorial services, where it has become a deeply cherished, albeit secular tradition. A retired Irish-American police officer, Charlie McKenna, famously declared, "I want Danny Boy sung at my funeral mass, and if it isn't, I'm going to get up and walk out." Its popularity at funerals is so profound that it is second only to Amazing Grace. It is particularly prevalent in public memorials for police and firefighters, careers often synonymous with Irish-American history. However, this immense popularity has led to an interesting irony. The secular song's widespread use prompted many Catholic dioceses in America to ban it from being sung during Mass, as it is not an official part of the ceremony. Opera singers like Mario Lanza, Ernestine Schumann-Heink and Renee Fleming have performed Danny Boy. Fleming notably sang it at the memorial service for US Senator John McCain in 2018 at his personal request, honouring his Irish ancestry. Crooners and popular vocalists such as Bing Crosby, Judy Garland, Harry Belafonte, Frank Patterson, Jim Reeves, Andy Williams, John Gary, Jackie Wilson, Ray Price, Roy Orbison and Harry Connick Jr. have recorded it. Harry Belafonte in particular in 1957. The live version changed "I Love You So" to "I Miss You So" and altered the second verse to be explicitly anti-war, showing the song's adaptability. Country and rock artists like Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, Conway Twitty and Thin Lizzy have covered it. Johnny Cash recorded Danny Boy twice, first on his 1965 album Orange Blossom Special, and again on American 4, The Man Comes Around in 2002. In the later version, recorded near the end of his life, Cash transformed it into a mighty hymn for all of us, revealing its emotional depth. Artists from a wide range of genres including Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells, Carly Simon, Tom Jones, Eva Cassidy, Shane MacGowan, John McCormick, Bill Evans, and even the Muppets have performed the song. The Beatles included a brief snippet of Danny Boy during their famous rooftop concert, with John Lennon singing part of it at the end of One After 909. Irish artists such as Sinead O'Connor have offered moving renditions, with some versions adding extra verses like "But If I Live" and "Should You Die for Ireland," strengthening its association with Irish nationalism. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir performed Danny Boy at the Red Rocks Amphitheatre in Colorado during their Central US tour in 2009. It was also sung by a choir at the 2012 Olympics, highlighting its global and cross-cultural appeal. The enduring influence of Danny Boy is also evident in modern music. The hit song You Raise Me Up, popularised by Josh Groban, has been noted for its strong resemblance to Danny Boy in parts of its melody, showcasing the song's staying power and impact on contemporary compositions. Despite its overwhelming popularity and profound emotional resonance, Danny Boy also elicits a complex love-hate relationship among many people, particularly some Irish individuals. Due to its sheer ubiquity and frequent performance, it has become for some not only an anthem, but also a cliché, leading to voices of dissent from the crowd if a singer takes it upon themselves to belt out one of the most overplayed songs in history of overplayed songs. Yet these same dissenters will willingly join in if the mood strikes and they're feeling particularly homesick, underscoring the deep, often contradictory, emotional connection many have with the song. In conclusion, Danny Boy has traversed a remarkable journey from an enigmatic ancient Irish melody, the Londonderry air, first transcribed by Jane Ross from an unnamed fiddler, to a globally recognised ballad with lyrics penned by an English lawyer, Frederick Weatherly, and brought to prominence by an English opera singer, Elsie Griffin. Its powerful appeal lies in its inherent ambiguity, allowing its themes of departure, loss, love, and the hopeful promise of reunion to resonate across cultures and personal experiences. Despite debates over its precise origins and its modern status as both a cherished anthem and sometimes maligned cliché, Danny Boy continues to hold a profound place in the hearts of millions, particularly the Irish diaspora. Its flexibility and direct sincerity touch souls, ensuring that this healing song will remain a timeless expression of deep human emotion, enduring forever, even if we must occasionally part with so much else.
I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so.
In Ravel's Glen there lives a man whom some would call a god, for he could cure your shakes, and a bottle of a stuff it cost you 30 bob. Come winter, summer, frost all over, a jig and spring in the breeze.
When we think of songs by the legendary Bobby Sands, one often immediately comes to mind: Back Home in Derry. But there's another song, quirky, bold, and steeped in Irish wit and rebellion, that tells a very different kind of story. It's called McIlhatton. And here's the kicker: this song isn't just a whimsical folktale. Thanks to a photo and a comment buried deep in a Reddit thread, we can now put a face to the name. A flesh and blood poutine maker from County Antrim, someone's great uncle no less, who captured the imagination of Bobby Sands and became the subject of this wild and wonderful ballad. Stay with me, because this story adds a surprisingly personal and relatable layer to Sands' work that many listeners might have missed before. First, for those who might be less familiar, let's quickly remember who Bobby Sands was. Born in Dunmurry, Northern Ireland in 1954, he became a central figure in Irish Republican history. Sands was a member of the Provisional Irish Republican Army. His life, though tragically short, left an indelible mark. He was arrested for firearms possession and sentenced to 14 years. While imprisoned at HM Prison Maze, he became the leader of the 1981 hunger strike, a desperate protest against the removal of special category status for Republican prisoners who wished to be recognised as political prisoners, not criminals. During this hunger strike, in a remarkable turn of events, Sands was elected as a Member of Parliament for Fermanagh and South Tyrone, without ever taking his seat. He died after 66 days on hunger strike, aged just 27 years old. Sands was not only a political figure, but he was also a writer. From his prison cell, he penned letters, articles, and even a prison diary. Crucial for our discussion today, he also wrote the lyrics for several songs, including both Back Home in Derry and, of course, McIlhatton. These writings served as a vital form of expression and resistance from within the prison walls. Now let's turn our attention to McIlhatton. Was it written in prison? The sources confirm it was. It's listed among his published works and writings on the Bobby Sands Trust website, alongside his prison diary. In fact, one online conversation mentions the song being specifically taken from the H-Blocks and introduced to Christy Moore. Christy Moore, the acclaimed Irish folk singer, later recorded and popularised the song on albums like Ride On in 1984 and Live at Vicar Street in 2002. So what inspired the song? The lyrics themselves introduce us to a captivating character. The song is about a fiddler named Mickey McIlhatton, who was sent to Crumlin Road Jail for making poitín. For those who might be unfamiliar, poitín is a traditional, potent Irish illicit spirit, often made in secret stills. It's a drink deeply intertwined with Irish history and defiance against authority. It also has the potential to knock you off your feet. The revelation about the song's inspiration gains a remarkable real-life connection thanks to a fascinating Reddit post. A user shared a photo proudly stating it was their great-uncle Mickey McIlhatton, famous poitín maker, and confirming that Bobby Sands wrote a song about him, made famous by Christy Moore. This Mickey McIlhatton hailed from Glenravel, County Antrim, and according to Christy Moore, Mickey was as well known in the area as the likes of Brendan Behan was in Dublin. The Reddit post also adds that this legendary County Donegal poitín maker had a very clever trick for hiding his stash. He would put the bottles of clear liquid upside down in a stream, making them hard for the authorities to spot. The photo of him here really captures the feel of old rural Ireland. Knowing this context, let's delve a little bit into the lyrics themselves. Sands paints a vivid and often humorous picture of McIlhatton. The song opens by describing him as almost mythical.
In Ravel's glen there lives a man whom some would call a god. For he could cure your shakes, and a bottle of a stuff it cost you 30 bob.
This opening immediately sets a tone of reverence, but it's tinged with a playful acknowledgement of his cure being strong drink. The chorus then rings out a heartfelt and slightly desperate plea.
McIlhatton, you blurt, we need you. Here are your million shaking men. Where are your sacks of barley? Will your legs be seen again?
The line about a million shaken men here likely refers to one of two things. People wanting a drink to calm their nerves, or even alcohol, as some of us know if you've had a few too many, you might have the shakes the next day. So it's probably just a playful way of simply saying, I need a drink. It shows just how much the community relied on McIlhatton's powerful brew back then. Of course, all in good fun, but alcohol is best enjoyed in moderation. Sands masterfully weaves in elements of Irish folklore and whimsical humour.
There's a wisp of smoke to the south of the glen, and the poitín is on the air. The birds in the burrows and the rabbits in the sky, and the drunkards everywhere.
This creates a wonderfully chaotic image, suggesting that McIlhatton's activities are so pervasive, even nature itself is under their influence, and everywhere you look there's merriment, or perhaps just widespread inebriation. Moving towards the end of the song touches on the constant cat and mouse game with the authorities.
He has 1,000,000 gallons of wash and the peelers around the glen. But they'll never catch that hackler, 'cause he's not coming home again.
Peelers is an old term for police, and hackler potentially refers to someone who hacks or works hard, often at a rough trade. The line suggests that McIlhatton's cunning, even as it hints at his eventual capture or disappearance. This song, with its celebration of an outlaw figure, taps into a long tradition of Irish cultural resistance. In the context of Bobby Sands, an IRA member who died campaigning for political prisoner status, celebrating a poitín maker reflects a deep-seated local defiance against external authority and a celebration of community solidarity. It's a subtle but powerful echo of the larger struggle of self-determination that Sands was engaged in, showing that even in prison his spirit was connected to the everyday acts of resistance and the colourful characters of his homeland. The fact that McIlhatton is about a real person, a great uncle, whose photo was shared online, gives the song an incredibly powerful real-life connection. It transforms it from a general folk tune into a personal tribute, a snapshot of a specific time and place in rural Ireland. It reminds us how Bobby Sands, even in the harsh isolation of prison, was deeply rooted in the lives and stories of his people. So the next time you hear Christy Moore sing McIlhatton, or somebody else for that matter, I hope you listen with a newfound understanding. It's more than just a catchy tune about a crafty fiddler. It's a great example of how a song can capture a real person, a moment in time, and a bigger story about community and defiance. It's one of those rare tracks that becomes even more meaningful the more you learn about it. You can hear it before you even realise you're listening. That haunting lilt rising from somewhere deep in the past. A young voice asks, "O Father dear, I oft times hear you talk of Erin's Isle, her lofty scenes and valleys green, her mountains rude and wild. They say it is a pretty place wherein a prince might dwell. And why did you abandon it? The reason to me tell." And the answer comes, quiet, heavy, and full of loss. Not just personal grief, but the grief of an entire people. "My son, I loved our native land with energy and pride. Until a blight came on my land, my sheep and cattle died. The rent and taxes were to pay, I could not them redeem. And that's the cruel reason why I left old Skibbereen." Most versions you'll hear today carry a slow, mournful air, but that wasn't always the case. Originally, it was sung to the tune of "The Wearing of the Green," a melody of defiance. Over time, the tone softened, but the story never did. The song Skibbereen is one of the most famous examples of traditional Irish songs about emigration, along with other songs like "Boys from the County Mayo" and "The Fields of Athenry" most famously. It is believed to have been written by Patrick Carpenter, a poet from Skibbereen, who emigrated to the United States. He wrote for publications in Boston and New York, and the song was first published in Boston in 1869 in a songbook called The Wearing of the Green Songbook, and this is according to skibbereen.ie. While some sources suggest it might be a traditional ballad collected in County Tyrone, according to Wikipedia, but the most accepted attribution is to Patrick Carpenter. The song is a poignant piece about the Great Famine and the impact it had on the people of Skibbereen and Ireland as well. But Skibbereen was one of the most affected areas, with between 8,000 and 10,000 people dead. Skibbereen is not only a song, it's a wound set to a melody, a conversation between a father and son, between generations split by exile. The father speaks of loving his homeland with pride, only to see it crushed by famine, rent and taxes, and finally by the ruthless hand of eviction. He paints a picture of a country not just starving, but simmering with rebellion brewing in the hedgerows. So now we know the style of the song. It's a dialogue between a father and his son, and we know the backdrop as well. A homeland devastated by famine, a people broken by poverty, and a man forced to flee not just because of hunger, but as well because he stood up and he resisted.
Oh, son, I loved my native land with energy and pride. Till a blight came and ruined my crops, my sheep and cattle died, and the rent and taxes were so high I could not them redeem, and that's the cruel reason why I left old Skibbereen.
Now let's have a wee look at that resistance. Let's focus in on the rebellion that he mentions, because if we understand what happened in 1848, we can understand why he can't go back and why he speaks of Ireland with such deep, aching pride. Now in the song itself, there's a powerful moment near the end where the father says he fought with the boys of 48. It's "Well I do remember the year of 48, when I arose with Erin's boys to battle against the fate. I was hunted through the mountains like a traitor to the Queen, and that's another reason why I left old Skibbereen." This isn't just a throwaway line, he's talking about the Young Islander Rebellion of 1848. This isn't a rebellion you hear much about these days, but it was a fiery, desperate stand made in one of the darkest moments of Irish history, right in the jaws of the Great Famine. So what was the Young Islander Rebellion? Well, it was basically Ireland's answer to a wave of revolutions sweeping across Europe at the time. France had booted out its king, the Germans were stirring, and the Hungarians were on the march. And here in Ireland, people were starving, being evicted, and watching their country rot under British rule. So yeah, it lit a fire. The group behind it all? A movement called Young Ireland, led by fellas like William Smith O'Brien, Thomas Francis Meagher, and John Mitchell. These lads were fed up with Daniel O'Connell's peaceful route to repeal. They wanted a free Ireland and they weren't afraid to raise a flag for it. But wait till you hear this. It was during a visit to France that Thomas Meagher brought back the Irish tricolour, the one that we still see flying around today. Green for Catholics, orange for Protestants, and white for peace between them. It was first flown in Waterford, Meagher's hometown. Wild to think that a symbol of hope and unity came out of a time when the country was literally falling apart. Anyway, in July 1848, the British government got spooked and suspended habeas corpus. Basically, what did this mean? It meant they could lock you up for breathing too loud. They even made up a brand new crime called treason felony, just to crack down on lads like Mitchell. Seriously, they made it up out of nowhere. The legal equivalent of you looked at me funny, off to jail with you. So, O'Brien and the others raised a ragtag force, miners, farmers, tradesmen, and headed to Ballingarry in Tipperary, where they made their last stand at a farmhouse owned by Mrs. Margaret McCormick. This is where things get properly cinematic. The police holed up inside her house, taking her kids hostage, and pointed their rifles out the windows. O'Brien walked up to the window and said, "We're all Irishmen. Give up your guns and you can go." But do you know what happened? One of the police fired through the window at O'Brien while he was trying to negotiate. Absolute chaos followed. People hiding behind walls, bullets flying, and the rebels completely underprepared. Some were even women and children. The fight, if you can even call it that, lasted a few hours. When reinforcements showed up for the police, the rebels scattered, and that was it. The whole rebellion fell apart in Widow McCormick's cabbage patch. The consequences were brutal. John Mitchell was sentenced to transportation, first to Ireland Island in Bermuda, and then all the way to Van Diemen's Land in Australia, modern-day Tasmania. Think about that for a minute. 1 second, you're in a potato field in Tipperary. Next, you're breaking rocks on the edge of the world. Others like Meagher and O'Brien followed him there after being captured, but a few managed to escape, James Stephens and John O'Mahony among them. And here's the twist of all twists. Meagher and Mitchell both ended up in America later, but they ended up fighting on opposite sides of the American Civil War. Meagher led the Irish Brigade for the Union, while Mitchell supported the Confederacy and even sent his sons to fight for the South. Same goal in Ireland, opposite sides in America. Mad. Stephens and O'Mahony, they weren't done either. They set up the Fenian Brotherhood in the United States, and later founded the Irish Republican Brotherhood back home. That organisation would eventually spark the 1916 Easter Rising decades later. So when that father in Skibbereen says he fought with the boys of 48, he's not just telling a war story. He's remembering a time when young idealistic men tried against famine, British guns, and history itself to light a spark for Irish freedom. And that spark, well, it didn't catch fire in 1848, but it smouldered, and it would burn again. So the next time you hear Skibbereen, you'll know. It's not just a sad tune from long ago. It's a story passed down in song, carrying the heartbreak, the rage, and the hope of a people who refuse to forget. One father's pain became a nation's memory, and even now, it still sings. So you've probably heard The Wearing of the Green at some point, that haunting old song about rebellion, sorrow and Irish pride. But have you ever really listened to the words? Who were the people behind it? What was happening in Ireland that made something as simple as a shamrock so dangerous? In this video, we're diving into the story behind the song, uncovering what those lyrics meant, who wrote them, and how they captured one of the most darkest and defiant moments in Irish history. By the end, you'll never hear The Wearing of the Green the same way again. Welcome to Ireland, 1798, a land poised on the knife edge of revolution, where the simplest gesture, the mere flash of a colour, could mean a death sentence. This is the world that gave birth to The Wearing of the Green, a song that is less a melody and more a lament, a whispered oath, and an eternal challenge to a crown that ruled by fear. To understand this ballad, we must first meet the rebels who made the green the colour of treason. The Society of United Irishmen, formed in 1791 in the wake of the French Revolution. These were men, primarily middle-class Presbyterians, who sought to overthrow the British Crown and the ruling Anglican ascendancy. Their goal was radical, a republic secured by a cordial union among all Irish people, Catholic, Protestant and dissenter alike. They dreamed of liberty and representative government, but as all hopes for constitutional reform faded, the society transformed itself into a clandestine, military-based revolutionary force. They adopted a uniform, unofficial though it was, the colour of green. This spirit culminated in the Irish Rebellion of 1798. Though initially it was uncoordinated and ultimately crushed by Crown forces, the sheer scale of the uprising horrified the British establishment. The response was brutal, defined by public executions, floggings and the violent suppression of all symbolic dissent. The opening lines of the ballad set this atmosphere of lethal persecution. "Oh Paddy dear, and did you hear the news that's going round? The shamrock is by law forbid to grow on Irish ground. St. Patrick's Day no more we'll keep. His colours can't be seen, for they're hanging men and women for the wearing of the green." This simple verse reveals the terror of the time. To wear the green, the colour adopted by the Society of United Irishmen, was an immediate declaration of rebellion, punishable by the gallows. In some versions, the green refers literally to the shamrock itself. The law criminalised the very display of Irish identity, turning a traditional emblem into a marker of insurrection. The ballad itself is a direct reference to the hanging men and women, a chilling reality following the mass arrests and executions of the defeated rebels. This line is hammered home repeatedly, reminding the listener that pride in their nation exacted the highest price. The song's narrative device is the encounter between the exiled narrator and a key figure of the rebellion. In the best known version, it is the renowned rebel Napper Tandy. "I met with Napper Tandy and he took me by the hand. He said, 'How's dear old Ireland and how does she stand? She's the most distressful country that you ever have seen, for they're hanging men and women for the wearing of the green.'" James Napper Tandy was a notable member of the Society of United Irishmen, active in Dublin, who notably joined the defenders in the city to promote the union of anti-establishment forces. He was an Irish rebel leader who was forced into exile in France. The dialogue in the song where Tandy asks for the news and receives the tragic report captures the anguish of those who plotted liberation from afar, knowing the terrible risks borne by those who stayed behind. An earlier 1802 version, published shortly after the repression of 1798, featured another great Republican martyr, Robert Emmet. Emmet, though not a commander in 1798, was a leading figure in the United Irish Executive who sought to resurrect the revolutionary movement after the defeat. Like Tandy, he sought French assistance in Paris. Emmet ultimately led the disastrous 1803 rising, proving that the Republican spirit persisted even after the Act of Union formally abolished the Irish Parliament in 1801. However, the enduring version of the song we know today, the version most often sung, was shaped much later by the Irish actor and playwright. And apologies in advance if you're fluent in French, I'm going to absolutely butcher this. Dion Boucicault. I think that's close enough. You can correct me down in the comments if I'm miles off, please let me know. But I'm going to refer to him as Dion from now on. He adapted the lyrics for his 1864 play, Ara na Póg, or The Wicklow Wedding, which was set during the 1798 rebellion. Dion himself would later move to New York. His version perfectly captured the complex emotions of the Irish diaspora. The central verses of Dion's version encapsulate the tone of resistance and profound grief. The narrator confronts the reality of British rule, symbolised by the cruel red colour of England, contrasting it with the bloodshed by Irish patriots. "Then since the colour we must wear is England's cruel red, sure, Ireland's son will ne'er forget the blood that they have shed. You may take this shamrock from your hat and cast it on the sod, but 'twill take root and flourish there, though underfoot 'tis trod." This is the sound of unyielding hope and defiance, the physical act of destroying the symbol. Casting the shamrock down cannot destroy the underlying sentiment. The ideal of Irish liberty, the song promises, is deeply rooted and destined to survive persecution. The grief is intensely personal, reflecting the separation and sacrifice demanded by the cause. The narrator laments that he cannot die for his country like his father, but this sorrow is tempered by the knowledge that he did not become a traitor. This refusal to betray the wearing of the green serves as a moral bedrock for the Irish Republican tradition. The final verse shifts from the resistance at home to the necessity of exile. But if at last our colours should be torn from Ireland's heart, her sons with shame and sorrow from the dear old isle will part. O Ireland, must we leave you, driven by a tyrant's hand, and seek a mother's blessing from a strange and distant land. This reflects the agonising decision faced by countless Irish families in the decades following 1798 and the Act of Union, when British control was absolute. Emigration became a form of enforced resignation. The narrator seeks a strange and distant land where the cruel cross of England shall never more be seen. This new world, often interpreted as America, where Dion himself eventually resided, offered the hope of freedom and political equality denied at home. But even in this far-off land, the commitment remains absolute. They will live and die still wearing Ireland's green. Exile does not erase identity, rather it solidifies it, carrying the fight and the memory across the ocean. The wearing of the green transcends its origins as a street ballad. The song's enduring spirit is confirmed by its shared air with other famous rebel tunes concerning the same era, such as The Rising of the Moon. From its dark, defiant roots is the repression of the 1790s. The ballad became a permanent fixture in Irish cultural history, recorded by icons like John McCormick, Judy Garland in 1940, and the Wolfe Tones. It has been referenced in literature, cementing its status not just as a song, but as a cultural touchstone, representing the perennial struggle against oppression. So the next time you hear its defiant melody, remember the world behind those words, the brave, desperate attempts of the United Irishmen to forge a nation free from tyranny. Remember that every chorus recalls those who paid the ultimate price, reminding us that for Ireland, the colour green was never merely a fashion choice. It was a declaration of war, fiercely worn then and proudly remembered now. For the wearing of the green, for the wearing of the green. They're hanging men and women for the wearing of the green. Thanks a million for watching. Please like the video, and if you're still awake, leave a comment below and share your thoughts as well. I will be continuing this story behind the song series throughout 2026, so please subscribe so you don't miss future videos too. If you're interested in getting any Irish music themed stuff like hats, hoodies, mugs, or even artwork for your wall, check out the shop. There's a discount on everything until the end of the year, so you can still get things a little bit cheaper till then. Also, a shout out to our channel members. Here's your names up on screen now. Thanks a million for all your support as always. I wish you all the best for the new year and hope you all have a great Christmas. If you want to join them yourself, just look for that join button down below there. I think it shows up after you subscribe. Or just check out the links in the description for more information. But that's it for me. I'll leave you to it. Thanks again for watching. Slán go fóill. Cheers.